Do you want to say hi? Do you want to say hi? Welcome back everyone to the Q&A part 2, and today we are going to be doing the culture-based questions. So in part 1 we did the personal-based questions, and today I thought it would be appropriate to go through what I think is probably what most people here follow me for, culture, and so therefore go through the culture-based questions. There are 29 questions that I have this time. Last time it was 30, and I promise to do my best to not make it as long as last time. But before I start, let's address the elephant, or should I say dog, in the room. This is Slinky. Can you say hi, Slinky? Slinky is my friend's dog, and I am babysitting him for the next 2 days, so he will be joining us for today on my lap while I answer your questions. All right, let's get straight into it. Question number 1. What are some of your favorite words in Irish and or Arabic? Also, you are lovely and wishing you well always. Thank you so much. My favorite words. Well, I can definitely answer the Irish one straight away, and that would be the word Saoirse. Anyone that's been following along in my vlogs will know that I named one of my ducks Saoirse. It is the Irish word for freedom. It is also a girl's name, and I absolutely love it. I think it is so nice, the meaning, the sound, and everything. Now, in terms of an Arabic word, I really don't think I have a favorite Arabic word, and that's really sad, actually. I want to say something really simple like shy, just because it represents what I like, but I actually can't answer that question. I feel really guilty that I'm able to answer the question for Irish and not for Arabic. How do you say dog in Arabic? Maybe I would say say kalb. Actually, no, because we often have a negative connotation with that. Maybe jamal. Jamal, I'm pretty sure, is how you say camel, and it sounds really nice, and I love camels. They're one of my favorite animals. So maybe I will say I'm so sorry for not doing justice the Arabic part of that question. But however, dating culture in Palestine versus Irish households, question mark. My interpretation of this may be different to yours, but I'm assuming you're asking me what the differences are between the two. And I feel like a simple answer would be something like exact opposites. In my Palestinian culture, there is very little acceptance, so to speak, around the notion of dating, whilst in my Irish culture, it's quite liberal, it's quite, you know, for want of a better word, progressive when it comes to their approach. So in my Irish culture, and now I know not every family is going to be the same, be it in the Irish or Palestinian culture, but in my Irish culture, my family are quite happy-go-lucky, quite easygoing, and they don't really mind as long as you're happy. I think my Irish family's overall, goal in life is just to be happy, and this is something that flows on into every aspect. So I feel like if they could just make sure that I or whoever it be in their family is happy, that's all they really care about. Whilst in my Palestinian family, they expect a certain level of education, a certain level of religion and ethnicity, especially cultural understanding that comes as a consequence. They expect a very quick turnaround in dating to marriage. You have to have chaperones. It's a whole rigmarole. So long story short, because I am, like I mentioned, trying not to make this as long as the previous Q&A, it is almost like stark contrasts. I do see, on that note, the merit from both perspectives, and I think I know you didn't ask this question, but to build on it, if I were to ever have children one day, I do think I would take from both. I would be neither Palestinian nor just Irish in my approach. I would definitely like to be a balance between the two, because like I mentioned, I see the merit in both sides. I see the pros and cons from being overtly liberal, and I see the pros and cons from being overtly strict. So somewhere in the middle, I feel, could be a really happy medium. How's the Arabic going? I would love an update on that. I am so incredibly sorry to tell you that my Arabic is not doing well. I have tried twice now outside of learning at home. I've tried once to learn in university and once to learn via the app Duolingo. And the problem with both of those is the heavy focus on Fusha, which is formal Arabic. And that serves no purpose to me when all I want to do is learn for a colloquial means. And so learning Fusha, which is something that they only use in formal settings, is essentially, if you like, a waste of time. Now, only from the vocabulary perspective, because I can't really use it. However, the silver lining is that I have learnt to read and write so well in Arabic, which, why would I need that? I don't really know, but it's a skill that I've acquired, and I'm happy because I'm glad that I can do something that I once thought would be way too difficult for me to ever achieve. But I am happy nonetheless because it's something that I took from it rather than nothing at all. I do have a bit of a base understanding of very basic words in Arabic, but learning to be able to have a proper conversation has not resulted from either attempts. And I'm not saying that I've completely given up. I'm just no longer using Duolingo at the moment for Arabic. I still use it for other things, just not Arabic. So I think my next step needs to be that I just really force the issue of trying to use it with my teta, so that's for anyone that doesn't know, my Middle Eastern grandmother, and with Musa, because they speak fluently. So I really should just be taking advantage of that and practicing with them. But we'll see how that goes. I must say I'm impressed already at how quick I'm being by going through these. How was it growing up with two different ethnicities, backgrounds, race, etc.? What were your struggles? How much Arabic do you know? I am asking because my nephew is mixed from an Arabic father and a Tibet. Oh no, I'm so sorry I didn't expand that comment. I hope I didn't miss any extra questions. I'm really sorry. I'll answer what I can, but I can't believe I didn't expand the comment. This little guy's just fallen down beside my leg and gone to sleep. Anyway, okay, so how was it growing up with two different ethnicities? Well, essentially, I didn't. My parents got divorced before I can even remember. And as a consequence, I just grew up with my mum. Now, I'll backtrack. I did grow up with two ethnicities, but of which were not both mine, only one. So, brief context, my parents divorced, they both went on to different partners. I rarely saw my father growing up. I did see him on occasion here and there, but it wasn't a lot. And for about, I'm going to say maybe 8 years, so pretty much all of high school really, aside from maybe one time when I attempted to run away, I saw my dad. But other than that, I never really saw my dad around my teenage years. So therefore, for the most part, I was really only exposed to my Arab culture. I was listening to the Arabic language to some degree. I was listening to Arabic music, eating Middle Eastern food, etc. Now, my mother's boyfriend is Nicaraguan, and there was a huge element of exposure to that culture, massive. Actually, I could almost argue more than my Middle Eastern culture in regards to what I was being exposed to. However, I was always, because of how conscious I was that he wasn't my father, and because of the issues we had, how separated I was from a connection with him, I have always been quite detached from that culture. In that I could appreciate it, I could enjoy the food and the music and the dancing with their family, but I always had a little bit of a wall up, accepting that that's not my culture. So in regards to your question, I essentially only grew up with one of my cultures. And actually, to answer your question in full, how was it? It was actually horrible, because not that I didn't enjoy my exposure to my Middle Eastern culture. I love my Middle Eastern culture, but I always felt that something was missing. I often hear people argue that if somebody is mixed race, that they're confused. Listen, I can understand why someone may think that, but actually I feel like if you are raised with both, it can be quite a non-confused. Sorry, he just shook. If you are raised with both, I feel like it can be quite a beautiful experience of variety, of diversity. But because I always knew that there were two parts of me and I was only being given access to one, I was constantly in search of access to, if you like, to the other. I was always trying to find books, which I did. I remember Disney had this little book about leprechauns. I was always trying to watch shows, for example, Balomori, which was a kids show based in, I believe, Scotland, but it felt very close to my father's culture. I was always trying to do things that reminded me of them. I had a lot of photos of them, and I used to see my grandmother and my auntie on my Irish side wearing a lot of gold, so I used to try and do that. There were just a lot of things that I was trying to fill voids with. I remember making a very strong stance, a very, very strong effort to pronounce Ireland with an R rather than an S, even though that wouldn't be typical of my accent at all. It was something I should have rather been saying island, but because I wanted to feel more connected, I wanted to feel more, closer to my father's culture, I was making a point, a very, very particular point of pronouncing that R, of which my mother did not like. But to answer your question, there always felt like, because of my circumstances, a void, and so it wasn't the best. And to sum that up, I do think if you're going to have a mixed race family, it is incredibly important to give them access to all parts of them, who they are themselves. It's such a beautiful thing to be mixed race, mixed culture, whatever it may be. And I think being able to be knowledgeable on all of that is quite empowering, actually. The next part of your question is, what were your struggles? And so I feel like I've already answered that. And then in regards to how much Arabic do you know, I've also already answered that in the previous, I think it was the previous question, yeah. And you're asking because your nephew has a Arab father and a Tibet, I'm gonna assume, mother. And you know what? I've never heard of that mix before, but I imagine that would be, as we say in Australia, an absolute cracker of a cultural mix. How was it growing up Arab, Irish, and a Christian? Was it hard to find people like you, or was it easy? Love you. Much love. Thank you for your question. So how was it growing up with both those cultures plus being Christian? Well, I went to Christian schools. So up until university, in regards to you asking about the Christian aspect, I never really noticed much of a difference. And then when I got to university and I realized majority of Middle Eastern people were Muslim, I actually felt really left out. And I went through a bit of a phase, so to speak, where I felt quite out of place. I felt different to the degree that I didn't like. I liked being different in that I was mixed, or that I wasn't what we would stereotypically call in Australia, a white Australian. I loved the fact that I had a different culture to majority of the people around me. So in that way, I never had the experience that a lot of, at least from what I've heard, a lot of Middle Eastern people have, where they just want to be like the people in the country that they are. So and I really don't like using this term, but as I already said, a white Australian, I've heard people in America say the same thing. They just want to be, American, until they grow up and realize that actually it's beautiful to be different. And I feel like, on that note, I just really want to stress, if you are American or Australian, there's also nothing wrong with that. You have your own beautiful elements to your culture and your experiences. But in regards to this question, I didn't struggle with that difference. I did struggle with the religious difference. And I suppose for a long time, I could even argue that I didn't like it. I believed in God and I had a great relationship through prayer with God, but I was quite irritated that I had to be so different from everyone else. I knew I wasn't allowed to be dating any of the men around me at university because they were all Muslim. And so if I took, any of the Middle Eastern men, that is, because they were Muslim, if I took an interest in any of them, I knew that was going to automatically result in complications, not just for my family, but also for theirs. So religiously, it was never a problem growing up, going to primary school or high school, purely because my schools were the same religion, were based in the same religion as myself. They were Christian schools, and so that was all right. But yeah, I never really noticed anything about that until I got to university, and then I started to be like, oh, it would have been nice if we were the same. But I grew out of that. I grew up and I realized actually I can enjoy being Arab and have things in common with all my other Arab friends that are Muslim whilst still being a Christian. And actually, when I started social media as a consequence of being an Christian Arab TikToker, in part, I ended up meeting a lot of other Christian Arab TikTokers and Muslim too, but it meant that I finally started to make more friends that were like me, which I think answers your question. Was it hard to find people like you, or was it easy? Yeah, it was hard in university, not in high school, and not once I started social media, but during that period in university, I definitely found that difficult because, like I mentioned, the majority were a different religion from myself. I thought I was going really fast because I'm already 20 minutes in and I feel like I've answered a lot of questions, but I realize I'm only on the 6th question out of 29. Okay, what advice would you give to parents who have an intercultural marriage who want to have kids? My partner is Palestinian American and I am white American. Okay, I love this question because I get it a lot, and I also hear a lot of other people, for want of a better word, arguing over this topic. My advice would be not to favor one over the other. They are not just Palestinian or just American in the example that you've given, or in my scenario that I am not just Arab or just Irish. Now, side note, in Middle Eastern culture, there is a little bit of I'm going to term a backward mentality when it comes to how we treat culture, and we say to our children that they have to follow their father, which is so incredibly misogynistic and just not true. That isn't how genetics work, right? You are 50-50. You are half your mother and half your father. So that is not at all plausible. So I mention this because both scenarios have half Middle Eastern backgrounds. And so therefore, don't listen to the people who say that you have to follow the father. That is such a wrong approach. And the child will inevitably, I think anyway, based on my experience, rebel and want to seek out an understanding and a knowledge of the other side. So do yourself a favor from the beginning. Be positive about both sides. Embrace both sides. Let them know that they are mixed and that there is nothing wrong with that. Allow them to enjoy having an abundance of cultural influences. Enable them to have access to and an understanding of everything that comes with both the Palestinian side and the American side, as I wish I had growing up, to the Palestinian side and to the Irish side. I would even go as far as to say, and I know for a lot of things they are quite similar with the example I'm about to use, but I'd say the same thing for cultures like if you were half Irish and half English. They have bad history. Doesn't matter. That is irrelevant when it comes to the child being able to enjoy and appreciate their cultural mix. I hope that answers your question, and if I've missed anything in that regard, please leave a comment in the bottom in the comment section, and I will do my best to add to anything else you'd like to know. Are you in touch with your family in Lebanon, and do you speak Arabic? This is why I mentioned in the previous Q&A that I would leave any Arabic-based questions to this themed Q&A because it was asked quite a lot. So I've already mentioned that I don't speak Arabic. No, I understand, the odd words and phrases here and there, but that's pretty much it. Now, am I in touch with my family in Lebanon? Not personally, really. I talk to maybe one auntie here and there. My family are very much in touch with them. So a lot of my Palestinian family that when they fled from the war and sought refuge in Lebanon, a lot of them stayed there. Some of them went on to different countries. For example, my family came to Australia. But we do definitely still have family in Lebanon, but I personally don't have a strong bond with them. Maybe if I'd ever visited growing up like my cousins did, then, it might have eventuated, but it hasn't. So I guess I'm grateful for the relationship I have with that one auntie. But no, I'm not as close with them as I am with the family that I have here. Which parts of Lebanese culture have you discovered, appreciated through your relationship? I laughed at first because I assumed that this was going to be referring to me being Lebanese. Love from a Lebanese English teacher in France who loves your content. Oh, how nice. First of all, thank you so much. That is so beautiful. A Lebanese English teacher in France. That must be an amazing experience. Which parts of Lebanese culture have you discovered and appreciated through your relationship? I mean, I guess I have discovered a lot of how similar we are. I know technically speaking, we are all, one big Levant family, but a lot of the time, despite how close we may be, there can be quite stark differences, and perhaps there are that I haven't really been that well acquainted with as of yet. But overall, I think it's been a nice experience. I've only ever been in 2 relationships my whole life. And in the first relationship, it was quite culturally speaking, and actually in a lot of other ways, religion, etc., very different. And I never understood how nice it would be to end up being with someone one day who had a shared cultural background. That's not to say that being with someone who doesn't have that with you can't work. It just didn't for me. but I never, because I wasn't exposed to it, had the appreciation of how nice it is to be with someone where you can relate culturally. It is so nice when I go to a shop and I talk about things from my culture that I experienced growing up with my partner, and he can agree with me, he can understand what I'm talking about, he can have his own experiences, stories to share. It's really nice when I don't understand, things in Arabic that he can tell me. So that's actually quite beautiful. So in summary, to answer your question, I think what I have grown to appreciate the most is being with someone where we share so much similarities. Culturally speaking, tell us your Irish family story, like where in Ireland are they from and why did your dad moved away and now goes back and forth? Have you been or do you intend to go? Do you have family who live there full time? I love being half Irish and I sometimes feel like I missed out on not growing up in Ireland and all of that brings. I agree very much with that last part. Maybe I'll answer this question backwards. I definitely feel the same, where I've had my moments where I question what I may or may not have missed out on as a consequence of not having grown up in Ireland. I hear the stories that my grandparents share of what their life was like when they grew up and lived there and all of that. And I wonder what I might have missed. But and this is perhaps my Christian upbringing influencing this, I definitely have made peace with the fact that, as someone who always talks about wanting to go back there and live there, etc., I've definitely made peace with the fact that this, I am sure, is what is meant to be for me. I am meant to be born and raised here, and I still hope one day I can go back there and experience, even if only for a short period of time. I hope I can go back and experience life as a working, living adult over there. But I do think that what is meant to be, as cliche as that sounds. I do think I've experienced enough things in my life that have made me really resonate with that saying. So whilst I share the sentiment, I do think we are meant to be wherever we are. Now to answer everything else in order, my Irish family story. So where in Ireland are they from? They are from Kildare, which is, I believe, southwest of Dublin. It's about, I think, an hour's drive. And why did they move away? They moved away for health reasons. So the climate just wasn't suitable. And it was deemed a necessity from the doctors for my grandfather to seek a warmer climate, which they did, and they chose Australia. And my father, does he go back and forth? Yes. It wasn't something that he always did. That's a more recent thing now that all circumstances are more enabling for that. But yes, my father does go back and forth to Ireland now. It's something that I think he has always wanted to do, and I hope one day maybe I can afford to do the same thing. But he at the moment is spending 6 months here, 6 months there, and that's probably something he would like to do, just to both have a balance between spending time with his family in Australia as well as maintaining a connection to his Irish roots. All right, buddy, you need to move a little bit. Oh, my legs have got pins and needles. He's just sleeping. All right, next question. Oh, sorry, I haven't finished answering your questions. Have I been and do I intend to go? I have been once. 7 years ago. I spent 3 weeks there over Christmas and it was amazing. So amazing that after just 3 weeks, I absolutely cried at the airport when I was leaving because I did not want to go home. And do I intend to go again? I definitely intend on going again, hopefully sooner rather than later. I am absolutely in love with Ireland. I loved Europe when I was there both times, and be it Ireland or anywhere else in Europe for that matter, I always will intend to go back. Do you have family who live there full time? I do. So actually, when my grandparents came to Australia, it was only them and their 3 children that came. Absolutely everyone else is still in Ireland. They stayed behind, and we have way more family in Ireland than we do in Australia. Are you Arab or Ireland? Well, I am definitely not a country, so I'm not Ireland. And am I Arab? Yes, I am half Arab and half Irish. I don't know why you asked that question. Maybe it's because you're new here and I'm a bit confusing with my content. What do you enjoy most about your Irish heritage and your Lebanese heritage? So I'm half Irish and half Palestinian, but in terms of what I enjoy most, well, this is probably a really easy one, especially for my Irish heritage. I enjoy, at least from what I've experienced with my Irish family, the exposure they've given me to my Irish heritage, I enjoy first and foremost the freedom of their nature, the liberalness in their mentality. I love how happy-go-lucky they are, like I've already mentioned. I love how willing they are to try new things and be flexible to suit and help others. I just love how open and friendly and nice and giving my Irish family are. It's a wonderful experience, especially for someone like me who ran away from what I did. And it's something that I learn a lot from. But more specifically to the heritage, holistically speaking, not specifically towards my own family, I love the Celtic culture. I love learning about our history, the indigenous Irish history. I love learning about our folklore and learning about our culture, be it about our traditional music and our language, etc. I love all of that. I love everything and anything to do with Celtic culture. And that isn't even just specific to Ireland, actually. When I learn about other countries, other neighbouring countries, that is, like Scotland's traditional Celtic culture and Wales and even England, I just find it all so incredibly beautiful. In terms of my Palestinian heritage, again, if I'm being specific to my own family, I love our nature, but when it comes to hospitality, I love how giving we also are. We are very much a food-based culture, and I love, first of all, actually, our food is amazing, but I love how it's almost, if you like, our love language, how we provide love through our giving of food, through feeding people. I also love our music. I also love our traditional dress. Palestinian thobes are amazing. I think they're so beautiful. And I would actually have to say, I also love our mentality when it comes to family in a different way to what I mentioned with my Irish family. Family definitely comes first in the sense that, the old take care of the young until the young then take care of the old, and the way that is meant to work out holistically, the way it's meant to be like this, Lion King reference here, but the way it's meant to be that like circle of life, I think is quite beautiful. You've done belly dancing in videos. Do you know any traditional Irish dances, and would you learn? Yes, I love belly dancing, and unfortunately I do not know any traditional Irish dances. I never learned that growing up. But in regards to the last question, would I like to learn? Definitely. So if anyone has any ideas of where as an adult I could go in Sydney, I would be so open to the idea of learning Irish dancing. Although I hear it is quite hard. Favorite Palestinian and Irish dishes? I'll start off with Palestinian because by far my favorite is mlokhiyeh. I'll probably have to put a picture up here for you. It is the most amazing meal. I love it. I could probably say everything that my teta cooks is my favorite meal, but mlokhiyeh is definitely number one. It's like a bone broth stew that you then boil with these mlokhiyeh leaves, which are, I believe we call them Egyptian spinach in English. I'm not sure, I could be wrong. And we boil that all together and serve it on top of a bed of rice. Now, in other cultures, be it Lebanese or Egyptian, they have a slightly different spin on that dish, but that's how we do it in my Palestinian culture. And absolutely top of the list for me. In terms of Irish dishes, I mentioned this in the previous Q&A, but I love soup and brown bread. I really like potato and leek soup, but basically any soup with brown bread, which is such an Irish thing to have, is my favorite. I love soup. I love basically any warm liquid like tea and hot chocolate and soup. I just love all of that. So mlokhiyeh for my Palestinian side and soup and brown bread for my Irish side. You didn't grow up in the Irish culture. How do you feel about embracing the culture now? Do you feel like an imposter? I'm curious because I found my long lost family 3 years ago. I don't feel like I belong in their culture because I didn't grow up in it. I just put him on his little bed. I'll show you because he's warming me up. Sorry with the camera work there. He's warming me up so much. All right, good. I think that's fine. I can relate to this on a level that I don't even think words will do justice right now. I have definitely felt like an imposter growing up in both of my cultures. So not just in my Irish culture for having not grown up with it, but also in my Middle Eastern culture. I'll start because you asked about my Irish culture. How did I feel embracing the culture, and did I feel like an imposter? So first of all, I definitely just love culture in general. So in terms of embracing my Irish culture, it could have been any culture and I would have embraced it. I just love culture so much. So I felt great, not only for learning and being a part of a new culture, but also, as I mentioned earlier in this Q&A, I finally was able to fill that void. I was finally able to fill that missing gap that I felt in myself. Like I already mentioned, you learn so much about yourself when you embrace all aspects of yourself, rather than be it pretending or being forced to only identify, only embrace, or only represent one aspect of you. So being able to finally have access to my Irish culture, being able to learn about it. Oh, I got a hair stuck in my eye there. My eye is probably red now because I just had to get what I think was a hair out of my eye. And let's not forget that it also took me a while to embrace the culture. Whilst I started to do so, it isn't something that you just absorb and take in overnight. It's a learning process. It's something that you have to spend, like I have now, 10 years being a part of, to really fully feel like it is a part of you. It takes time to understand, you know, for want of a better word, the nuances, the multifaceted elements to such a diverse and multifaceted culture. But as a consequence, I definitely felt like an imposter. I spent so long trying to fit in and trying to not feel like I favored one side over the other and try to represent both equally. But how could I do that when I was predominantly rather exposed to just one? And even like I alluded, I felt like an imposter in my Middle Eastern culture. For starters, unless I have makeup on, for whatever the reason may be, I feel like I look Irish for the most part. Like, a lot of people think that, oh, your hair is very Middle Eastern. Actually, no, I take my hair from my father's side. Now, the curls or waves rather are very much from my Middle Eastern grandfather, but the coloring, the thickness, and all of that is from my father's side. My father's side are very hairy. I have green eyes like my grandfather, sorry. I have very pale skin like my father's family. Maybe my eyebrows and my eyelashes, that's probably about it that I could really say that I got from, at least what I can see when I look at photos of my parents, what I got from them. So I spent a lot of time feeling like, because I wasn't fully one, that I was somewhat of an imposter because I couldn't feel like I fit in either or perfectly well. Apologies, I was gone for the last hour and a half, roughly speaking. So if the lighting, etc. looks different, that is why. But let's get straight back into it. What's your favorite part of the Arab culture? I definitely already answered this question, but probably the hospitality, our approach, just to reiterate, our approach to hospitality. What are the best ways to learn Arabic or Irish? I would love to learn both. So would I. Again, I've already alluded to the answer I'm about to give here. And I really believe, based on so much experience, that the only way for you to learn is to immerse yourself in the language. And I don't think necessarily that is always ideal, immersing through a course, through an app. I mean immersing with the people that are actually speaking it. That way you yourself are forced to use it. Do you have Lebanese roots? As far as I am aware, no. But my Palestinian family, when they fled the war, did seek refuge in Lebanon and therefore started to have their children there, etc. But I do believe, and I'll probably have to fact check this, but I do believe my grandmother, my teta, always used to talk about how my grandfather, her husband, was half Lebanese, that his either mother or father was born in Palestine and the other born in Lebanon. And then the one that was born in Lebanon came to Palestine. but I can't be sure as to which one. So, yes, I do. Not much, but I do. Have you ever visited Ireland, Berna? If so, how was it? I've already answered this question similarly, and there have been a few questions that I haven't specifically put up here, so apologies, but they are almost identical to others that I've already answered. But in short, because I don't necessarily think I answered the last part that well, but yes, I have visited Ireland, and in terms of how was it, it was amazing. It felt like coming home. It felt like that missing part of the puzzle that just helped me fill that void that I mentioned earlier about how I had this feeling of being like an imposter, that it wasn't really my culture because it had been missing for so long. So going to Ireland and experiencing everything rather in Ireland was very much like a homecoming experience. I loved it. And in essence, that would be why I cried when I was leaving. I just didn't want to lose that feeling, and I didn't know when I would be back, although at the time I definitely had promised myself that I would be coming right back, and obviously I did not, but I loved it. I can't say it enough. Ireland was amazing. I loved Europe in general, but being somewhere where you felt connected, where you felt your roots, so to speak, was a privilege. It was an absolute honor. Have you ever had culture shock? Without question, yes. Between my own cultures though, so I'm not sure how you meant this question, but I have had so much culture shock within my own cultures, because my own cultures are so vastly different that when I experience something, for context's sake, for example, the approach to how we treat our daughters when they're going to be dating or getting married versus how we treat our sons in Arab culture, and then look at that, how we do that in my Irish culture. Like it is so vastly different that in of itself is a culture shock. Like when I ran away from home, like 10 years ago now, I'd come from a Middle Eastern family. My mother is Middle Eastern, and that was her culture, her cultural influences, etc. Now, granted, her nature, I'm not blaming on culture. That's a separate issue entirely. But that is what I was exposed to. So when I moved into my Irish family and everything was basically, you do what you like. Nobody has to ask for permission for anything. You do whatever makes you happy, was a big culture shock. Are you Arab Christian? What is your nationality? I mean, legally, my nationality is Australian, but I am half Palestinian, half Irish, and my religion is Christian. Would you please share some great ideas for interracial couples with your significant other? Because a lot of your audience would prefer marrying from outside of their race and I'm so sorry, and culture. Again, how did I do this again? This is another one of those questions where I didn't expand. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure about the assumption about a lot of my audience preferring marrying outside. I can't confirm that. I'm not really sure. But I know everybody has their preferences, which is totally fine. But in terms of sharing ideas for interracial couples, maybe again, I've already alluded to this, I'm not sure, but just as I mentioned about how children should be exposed equally to both of their cultures, I would argue then as well that in a relationship, there shouldn't be one culture that dominates over the other either. So as I suggested with children, embracing all, not having one being favored, in a relationship, both cultures should be respected, should be practiced, should be enjoyed, etc., to whatever extent the respective parties, that a respective person in the relationship desires. You go into a relationship knowing that your partner is whatever culture, whatever religion, whatever, beliefs, practices, morals, values, etc., that they adhere to, and that should be respected. So if you're in a relationship where you're an interracial couple, it is, of my opinion, purely, but I am sure a lot of people would agree with me, that you should embrace both sides, regardless of similarities or differences. Enjoy everything and try and make it as, holistic, as one big, happy, enjoyable experience as is possible. Respecting each other, doing whatever you can to enjoy not only your own, but also each other's. I'm so sorry. I've just realized this is another question that I have not expanded. I don't know how I missed that. Apologies again. I also come from a mixed background, both cultures and religions. Wow. Did you struggle with your identity or with sense of belonging? If yes, how did you cope with it? Hope the question is not too hard. Also, and apologies for the repetition. I know I have touched on this already, but did I struggle with my identity or with my sense of belonging? Yeah. But that's not to say that I didn't eventually come around to it and find it and be very happy about it at all. But I did spend a long time growing up where I had my phases where I was younger, where I would initially favoritize internally my Irish culture. And then as I got older and I entered into my later teenage years, early 20s, and I started to favor my Arab culture. I went through my phases where I obsessed over one more than the other until eventually I came to a point where I started to have a balance and appreciation for both. My experience in obsessing over one and then the other came together quite well to balance it all out. In terms of how did I cope with that feeling of not belonging, of struggling with my identity, I would definitely just try and immerse myself more in whatever it was that I was struggling with. So like I mentioned before with the Irish culture, I would be reading books and watching shows in order to feel more connected to it. As I got older with my Arab culture, when I tried to feel more connected to it, I would go to my teta's house and write down recipes, ask her to tell me how she made things, get her to actually make them and then me film them so I would have actual documentation, video evidence of her doing it. I would ask more to learn the language. I mentioned that I went to university to study Arabic at a particular point. I went and I started learning how to do belly dancing, although I already did know how to do it from my family, but I wanted to learn properly, so to speak. And I tried, I immersed myself more in a social setting with more Middle Eastern people just to try and embrace it in a more authentic manner to fill in whatever gaps I felt that I had. The question is not too hard, don't worry about that, and thank you for asking. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we are down to the last 4 questions. All right, now, have you ever been in Palestine? Unfortunately, no. I did have a discussion, not an opportunity, but a discussion with my family about this several years ago. And unfortunately, it's just not an option. Aside from how risky the circumstances are, it is just definitely something that I've never been able to do. I would love to one day, God willing, but it's just difficult circumstances, as I'm sure many of you can understand. It's not an easy place to just go and visit. And my family, I wouldn't want to go alone. I'd want to go with my family. I'd want my family to tell me where they're from, talk about all their memories if they could, etc. And so I would want to be able to organize it in a way that I could go with them. So fingers crossed, one day soon. I saw that your mother is from Palestine. What are your feelings about the current situation, and do you have any family over there? Yes, my mother is from Palestine, and I do have family over there still. I have a lot of family in Haifa. So I actually couldn't even tell you how many, but I do have a lot of them that stayed and a lot of them that left and then dispersed. So we had several family members that had to leave and sought refuge in Lebanon, and then from there might have gone to Canada, America, Australia, Germany, and I don't know if there was anywhere else, but pretty much those countries. Then we had family that chose to stay behind, to which are still in Haifa today. I don't want to ignore part of your question, so without being rude, I'm just going to say, in terms of my current feelings on the situation, I will never be political on YouTube. However, if you want to see anything that I have said more in depth about the topic, I have that on Instagram or on TikTok. I am not that political in the first place, but as someone who is Palestinian, of course, I had a few things to say about it. But in short, I will say here that I very much don't approve of anything that is happening. Naturally, I don't know how anybody would. It breaks my heart, regardless of the person being whatever religion, whatever ethnicity, to have what is happening happen to them. Oh, sorry, there was 3 questions to go, not 4, because one was doubled up. Okay, last question. I have a question. I always thought that having a belly was needed or highly encouraged in belly dancing, but my dad says that only skinny girls should do belly dancing. Who is right, or are we both wrong? I don't actually know if there is a right or wrong to that answer, and I really hope that there isn't, because it shouldn't matter, first and foremost. But in belly dancing, regardless of whether you have a belly or whether you do not have a belly, so to speak, you can dance. Now, of course, your physique will make things look differently, and that's totally fine. Dancing is meant to be a physical expression of your enjoyment, of your inner artistic love for whatever it is that you're feeling, be it the music, be it whatever that makes you move. Dancing for me is almost, well, it feels anyway, almost like a primal instinct. When I hear Middle Eastern music, the way I automatically want to dance. It has nothing to do with my physical appearance. It's just what I feel. Dancing is quite a beautiful thing, and to be limited in someone's ability to be permitted to do something or deemed as appropriate to be doing it, etc., sounds and feels so incredibly wrong when you think about how beautiful dancing is. It's wrong in a general context, but it doesn't matter when it comes to dancing. In my opinion, don't count me as a professional belly dancing teacher. I have had a similar experience to you in the sense that I've seen people, heard people rather, say that you need a belly when belly dancing in order to see it move. I've also heard the reverse, where people say, oh no, you don't want to be seen with a belly, you need to be skinny in order to belly dance. I don't think there is anyone that is right or wrong here. What I think is that people are saying things that is entirely irrelevant to the concept. Dancing is an art form, and therefore as a consequence a means of expression. How you look should not matter. All right, well, I am very surprised to say that that is the last question. I am now at about an hour's worth of recording, so once I edit this, it should surely be a lot less than 1 hour. So I am going to leave this here. Again, like I mentioned in the first part of this Q&A, if you have any other questions to do with this, please leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them there. Or if I feel like they need more of an in-depth answer like this, I will try and put them in any of the other videos if they fit into those themes. So coming up, we still have questions based on modest fashion, based on poetry, based on religion, childhood trauma, and a few random ones here and there. Oh, and even actually some on social media. Otherwise, as usual, thank you so much for watching. This guy has been the best little sidekick. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And until next time, much love and God bless. Mwah. Can you give everyone a little kiss? Ready? Say mwah. Mwah.